Hey everybody, welcome to episode 50 of FoundersGyan. Yes, we have reached a milestone thanks to all you listeners and founders. Thanks for tuning in. Each week we bring you the inspiring story of a startup and its founder. This week we have Dr. Anand Lakshman, the founder and CEO of AddressHealth, a startup that aims to address pediatric childcare via type with schools. We'll talk more about that on the show. We had a great time in putting this episode together and hope you like it. Also, don't forget that we have the #AskMarcus campaign running to answer all your startup IP related questions. Simply use the hashtag #AskMarcus, that is AskMarcas in Facebook or Twitter, and ask your startup related queries and we'll address them in upcoming episodes of the show. Finally, do check out our show notes over at foundersgyan.com/EP50, that is www.foundersgyan.com/EP50, and also check out our 50 episode archive over at www.foundersgyan.com. One last thing, starting from this show, we will have a special segment in every show where we get into a deep dive into a specific topic that is close to the founder's heart and the founder considers himself or herself an expert in. So watch out for that segment. Okay, enough with the intro. Let's get on with the show now.
Dr. Anand Lakshman, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to meet you and be chatting with you today. Anand is one of the founders of AddressHealth, a platform that was founded with the vision of making pediatric primary care continuum. More about that on the show. Anand is a public health management professional and medical doctor with over 10 years of experience working with government, international agencies and NGOs at both district, state, national and international levels. He has worked extensively in 12 states of India on childhood undernutrition as well as with WHO as a medical consultant to the state of West Bengal, where he helped set up the revised national TB control program in five districts of South Bengal. Anand did his master's degree in health administration from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Lastly, Anand considers product design to be his forte, so we'll dig into that a little bit as part of the show. So Anand, great to meet you and thanks a lot for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thanks Ram for inviting myself and AddressHealth on to FoundersGyan. Happy to talk and chat.
Cool. So Anand, let's talk about your journey. Now I guess I pretty much covered everything before AddressHealth. Is there anything more you'd like to add to your background?
Yeah, so I'll go right into, I was born in Bangalore, but I grew up in Calcutta. And you could say that in many ways we had exposure to small-time entrepreneurship right from my childhood. I used to run a lending library in my neighborhood.
Okay.
Whenever it was time to the school year to start and to buy notebooks and things like that for school, myself and my brother would go around the neighborhood and collect all the list of books that children needed and go and buy it in wholesale so that we could have our books for free.
Okay.
We did the same around Diwali, where we would get the list of crackers everybody wanted, go and buy it at somewhere far away from Calcutta, and try to get our crackers for free. So that kind of stuff was always there in our as we grew up.
Okay. So I guess entrepreneurship was there in your DNA, right? So explain to us a little bit more in detail on the concept of AddressHealth, because I think it's not very clear from the description what the continuum part of pediatric healthcare is about child health, right? And also, how did you come up with this idea in the first place?
So the name AddressHealth is an interesting name. It consists of two English words, address and health.
Right.
Address is an interesting word in the sense that it's both a verb and a noun.
Right.
In its noun form, it means obviously to a home or a residence for something. In a verb form, it means to proactively do something about it. So if you look at healthcare, what we say is that healthcare has been stuck in the mainframe era of computing. Large hospitals, reactive to disease, right? So you build large capital intensive infrastructure and then wait for people to fall sick and come in.
Right.
We have been forever believing that healthcare needs to move along from the mainframe computing era to the personalized, on the laptop, on the mobile, on the go kind of health. And we need people to proactively address their health rather than wait for them to fall sick.
Right.
So we have been talking about creating new addresses for health as well as getting people to proactively address health. And that's how AddressHealth was born.
Okay.
However, when we were born, we decided to focus on pediatrics and child health for a few reasons. India is a specialty crazy country.
Right.
From a healthcare perspective. At the drop of the hat, people in urban India can go get a cardiologist opinion, a neurologist opinion. If they had a headache, they would probably go to a neurologist. If they felt that they had high BP or something, they would go to a cardiologist. So the era of the family physician, as we know it, is kind of over.
Right.
Even among the medical community, it is considered great misfortune if you did not specialize.
Okay.
It is felt like you have not achieved your life's goal if you have just ended up being a so-called inverted commas general physician.
Right.
Although there is a great role that a general physician can play.
Of course.
So pediatrics is an interesting area. We are a very young country. 22% of the country is school going. 27% is pediatric, from infant to school going age. Pediatrics is an established specialty. As in, the general public knows child specialist. When you talk about, it's considered as specialist care.
Right.
But in essence, it is delivering primary health care to children.
Correct.
So it is a primary healthcare specialty.
Right.
So we thought that it's a nice niche segment in which to deliver primary health care.
Right.
So that is how we chose pediatrics.
Right. Okay. And so what is it that exactly you do in AddressHealth?
So AddressHealth is trying to provide one-stop shop healthcare for children. But our main focus of this one-stop shop healthcare to children is through schools.
Okay.
So we provide one-stop shop healthcare to children and parents using schools as our main base and contact.
Right.
So how we do it is that we have school health programs. These school health programs provide annual health check to children. We have a health education curriculum which teaches health education to kids. Mental health programs in school. We provide school emergency service, medical services. Beyond all this, we run a chain of clinics which provide integrated primary health care, that is with pediatric medical care, which includes illness and vaccination visits. We provide dental care, vision, that is provision of spectacles in children identified with vision defects, nutrition counseling, and mental health counseling and assessment.
Okay.
Now these clinics, when we started off, we were locating them in outside world in the commercial complexes. We realized that our tie-up with school is so unique that schools' infrastructure can be leveraged to deliver primary health care.
Right.
So now our chain of clinics are increasingly getting located inside schools, where we deliver school health services during school hours, but it becomes a clinic for children after school hours.
Okay, great. Now, how many schools have you tied up with? What's kind of your scope of operations?
So last academic year, we covered 1 lakh children in school.
Wow, okay.
This year we are looking at 150 private schools, and this year we have launched in partnership with the leading NGO, Karuna Trust, and corporate social responsibility programs of Cerner and Bosch, leading multinational, a program for public schools where we are covering 110,000 children in schools of the government in Bangalore City Corporation area.
Okay.
So our overall outreach this academic year would be close to 260,000 children.
Wow. Okay, that's some great numbers there. Now, I'm also curious about the tie-ups. Do you have the tie-ups with the school? So does the school pay for this, or do parents have to opt in and pay? How does the whole model work?
So generally speaking, the way I like to explain it to schools is, if you look at the continuum of health and disease,
right.
Health is the responsibility of school, disease is the responsibility of parent, right?
Okay.
So anything to do with health of children, where you are trying to promote health, identify conditions or things like that, it's a school responsibility. So our school health programs, for instance, I mentioned the annual health check,
right.
the curriculum for health education in schools, the mental health program, and the school medical emergency medical room services. We get into contracts with schools. we provide these services to the school, usually charged on either a per child basis or a per school basis. Schools would typically recover this in fees.
Right.
Eventually, they would recover the costs in fees by charging a small annual amount to the parent.
Right.
But we don't directly enter into contract with parents for the school health programs.
Okay.
But our clinic services, which basically deal with illness care, vaccination visits, and the follow-up on the illnesses and conditions identified in school health program.
Right.
Here, the parent currently pays on a per child, per visit, per consultation kind of basis.
Right.
We are trying to move this towards new payment mechanisms which get integrated with the school services.
Okay.
So if I know that my customer is the child of a particular school, or the parent has a sibling who one child is school going, the other is infant,
Right.
we can rely on them to make these payments. We can go into a cashless insurance kind of model using school as a mechanism
Right.
to collect these payments. But as on date, those payments, clinic related, encounter based payments, are cash payments made by parents as they use the service.
Okay, great. Okay, now let's talk a bit more about idea creation. So, I think you briefly touched on how you came up with this idea, but can you tell us how can we also come up with a good idea? What's your thought on that? Can we come up with a good idea, or it has to strike you suddenly?
So, before we started, we gave a great deal of importance to the idea.
Right.
We used to think that, if you have a superb idea, it's half your business.
Right.
Over 6 years, what we have learned is a good idea is not worth even half of its implementation ability.
Right.
So I think a good idea is important from the point of spurring the founders into action, galvanizing action, making the founders feel that they are doing something which is motivating, that's something big, something which the world will recognize them by, or their fellow followers, friends, community will recognize them by, and things, those aspirational motivations that people generally have. But I think that the idea gets molded many times around as we go about implementing.
Right.
But what gets built along the way is the core DNA.
Right.
The core DNA of AddressHealth is we are about children.
Right.
That we are about healthcare in children, that we are about non-hospital healthcare in children, that we are about proactive healthcare in children. Around this theme, I have looked around multiple pivots that we have done as we have gone around.
Right.
But the more pivots we have done, the more our theme has got solid. The more our conviction in what we are doing has got fructified, kind of solidified.
Right.
It's important to ideate. It's important to have a very striking idea, because one thing about ideas is that very often what you have thought about has been thought out by many other people. Many times we get to feel good about ourselves,
right,
that we are so brilliant that what we have thought is something which nobody else has ever thought about. Usually that is not the case. Usually most of what we have thought has been thought by many other people.
Right.
But it's good to ideate. Because the more you ideate and come up with a really grand idea, the chance that you will have a head start on when you start up is definitely much higher, rather than somebody who says, okay, I want to start up for the sake of starting up, and then I'll discover as I go along.
Right.
So it is good to have an idea. It is good to have that idea as a central motivator of the reason to start up.
Right.
But it is necessary not to get fixated to the idea to such an extent that you then think that it's like the problem and the solution.
Correct.
Are you starting off with a solution and then trying to look for a problem, or are you looking at the problem and then trying to create a solution?
Right.
So I think the idea is useful, but we should be ready to make changes as we go along.
Okay, great. Thanks for explaining that. Now, obviously, you already mentioned this, that good idea is worth only half its worth
in
implementation. Sorry, thanks for reminding me. Now, what are the steps that a person needs to follow in order to make the idea into a reality? Some very high-level steps, because there are various methodologies, there are various paths somebody can take. You can do market research, or somebody says, just create an MVP, or business model, create a business model. So many different parts are there. What in your mind do you think is the way that you would go about?
So I go back to the days when we were toying with the idea, right? Like I think we talked a lot about the idea. We talked about the existing market. Not so much as in organized market research, because sometimes market research is overvalued.
Right.
It's very expensive to do good market research. But we did a lot of reading up and looking at things and looking at where the market is and where we want to be. From there, we definitely conceptualized the product or the idea, the service in our case, but I'm calling it generically as product.
Yeah.
And from then onwards, we worked on a rudimentary business model.
Okay.
To see that what is the kind of reach we need, what is the kind of market we need to tap into on a theoretical Excel sheet to achieve the basics of being sustainable and generating some profit. So
right.
If you go back to those sheets from 6 years back, they're almost comical because we would have thought of things in a very different way.
Right.
Fundamentals still remain.
Right.
But we would have thought.
Would you say you were too optimistic, too pessimistic? How would you say that?
I would say optimistic, definitely, because nobody starts off with an idea and wants to be a founder or a startup without being optimistic, right?
Over optimistic, I guess, is.
Yes, so the point is not just being over optimistic. I think it is important. The point is simply that when you enter the market, the environment gives you a lot of feedback.
Correct.
And you keep factoring it as you go along. You don't realize that much feedback has been factored in. And you can't just build a business model and say that this is a winner.
Right.
As I have been coming back to it earlier also, the implementation is the key.
Right.
And so business models are useful from putting your thoughts onto a paper or Excel sheet. But definitely the validation, if at all you are asking somebody on business model, you may get a lot of negative feedback. Because typically when you ask somebody for feedback, it is expected that they will tell you why it will not work.
Correct.
What is important on we get validation on feedback is simply to understand, okay, these are the challenges somebody is telling, and I will factor these in when I keep working on my plan. So that is where it comes from. But I think after this, we sort of decided that we have to get incorporated. It is important that we get incorporated, and then decisions around quitting one's job and moving to another city and all of those kind of decisions. And then of course you start, and then you start working and it goes along.
Okay, great. Now let's talk about your personal life. Now we all know that it's well known that founders sacrifice family time to make their ventures a success, and being a doctor requires a lot of sacrifice generally. Ordinarily doctors work long hours, they're on call, they keep getting disturbed, So tell us a little bit more about your family and how do you manage your business and your family time?
Right. So, I had the great advantage that we have a close-knit family. I live with my parents, my wife and my daughter. And so I remember before we started up, I was in a well-paid UN job in Delhi, and we sat around on my parents' bed, all of us talking about I will be starting up, and for the next 2 years they can't expect a single penny from me, and how is it going to be managed, things like that. The family recognized the strong emotional need for me to do something beyond what I was doing. So when that strong need was felt by the family, everybody turned supportive. Everybody said, we will pitch in to the best possible. And pitch in is in two ways. Either we will make sure that whatever money we have, we will contribute. Second, we will cut our expenses. So from a monetary perspective. Then comes the emotional perspective, right? Everybody says that, we know you will go through high and lows, you will go through difficult days. So we will make sure that we don't further upset you or make you, feel bad about some things. So those kind of things. So one thing is, one thing that I have done is that kind of maybe I have compromised on social life I have stuck to the startup and family.
Right.
And sort of within that tried to get the maximum kind of, I would say, positive reinforcement to keep going.
Right.
So whenever I go back home, I try to spend more time with my family. We probably do less outings, less holidays kind of stuff compared to normal family.
Right.
But we spend more time together. We are bound more. And then that also helps because you go back with a problem and you get the positive feedback and energy from people.
Okay, great. I think this is like really good advice here because I think by cutting down on your social outings, I think you're able to contribute both to your family and business. You're giving maybe 80-20 or 50-50. So I think that's really great advice for our listeners. And now let's talk about daily or morning ritual. Is there any specific ritual that you follow? It could be things like maybe you like going to the gym or meditation. It could be professional or personal, maybe at work before you get into emails and things like that, get into work. Maybe you set aside some time to do something. Just pick one and tell us if there is something you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'll have to disappoint you on that because frankly speaking, I am not into any of those kind of things.
Okay.
Luckily, touch wood, I am a great sleeper.
Okay.
I put in at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep every day, whatever be the situation.
Okay.
I can think of the most difficult days when we have gone through as a company, and I've still hit the sack and slept well.
Right.
That's a great boon, I would say.
Okay.
So beyond this, I don't have any such this thing because basically if you look at it from my perspective, the way I look at it, I know that contentment is root for all happiness.
Right.
And I'm kind of, in a way, I'm not spiritual because I don't follow any spirituality as such. But I sort of realized that there are only happiness in small things. And so for me, my happiness is linked to reading the Hindu from first to last page every morning.
Okay.
And I can say my deep meditation is reading the Hindu every day. Because I find on days that I don't read the Hindu, I am irritable. So you can probably say that is my way.
Yeah, that's. I think even the 7 to 8 hours sleep could be considered a ritual because you're doing that consistently on a daily basis, and I think reading the paper from start to end, I think it's definitely a ritual because if you do it every single day, most of the days, I think that's a good one. So now let's get into a little bit of product management. So we'll take a little bit of a deep dive into product management. So let's start with you explaining a little bit more about how you started designing this product, and we'll take some further questions around exactly the design of a product for a startup. Let's try. You can of course use terms related to your startup, obviously, but if possible, let's keep it as generic as possible so that other startups and other listeners can utilize this knowledge to design their own products or service.
Sure. No, so I think we have undergone lot of revisions. Pivoted our model many times around. So I'll start off from where we started up the model.
Right.
We knew we are going to be in pediatric primary healthcare and that we want to work with healthcare of children, but we thought we'll pilot starting with one problem or one issue. So we started off what we call disease management programs. So chronic diseases in children like asthma need a beyond the doctor's prescription approach. You need to empower families, you need to monitor data, you need to educate people about the condition and so on. So two of our co-promoters in those days based in UK, they are doctors in UK. They had worked with similar programs in the National Health Service. So we learned from them. We learned from the international experience and said, how can we replicate this, however, in a paid model in India?
Right.
And we created the model. I had public health experience, so I know how to design a program, how to design the steps, how to design a product from the public health perspective. So I did it. We lay out the, number of visits, for example, for an asthma program, how many visits will a nurse make, how many calls will be made, how many SMSs will be sent out, how many reports go to the treating physician, and then each visit, what is the objective of the nurse, how does she cover that objective, how does she cover it after she's finished, how does she know whether she has made the people understand everything. So we made checklists and all of that. From a technical standpoint, we made all of it and we started implementing. While doctors appreciated the design, the problem was not with the design.
Right.
They started saying that, look, we are not used to collaborating with anybody. Saying in the sense, not so much in direct words.
Right.
We are afraid of losing our patients. If we start working with you guys and you flick our patients,
right,
then how will it? So they were very scared to give patient leads to us. So we realized that we have to establish direct contact with our customers, that is parents, to be able to get leads. So we got into school health programs because school was one of the places where we could work on a condition like asthma and educate the community and make customer contact.
So let me just move back one step. So you used an existing program. So you had some people in the UK, a few doctors in the UK, and you kind of tried to replicate an existing working model. So do you think that's a good that's a good starting point for a startup? You know, for example, I'll just take maybe Ola, who kind of very successfully replicated Uber's model.
Yes.
So something is working somewhere else.
Yes.
So do you think it's like a good starting point to look at similar products in the market, maybe find out how they are doing and replicate it?
Yeah, I think, what is the problem we are trying to solve? So it was about gaps in children's health.
Right.
And it's not like the world has not thought about gaps in children's health.
Right.
Different health systems have taken different approaches.
Right.
But what we learned was only the product, but not about the payment mechanisms, all of that. Like in UK, practically nobody has to make a decision that I have to pay X to get this program, right?
Correct.
It's part of the government's program for
Correct.
free.
Correct.
So while the product design was many ways taken from there, the product was very different because here is a product that has to be sold for a particular value to the patient, and the patient may not perceive that value. One of the issues in healthcare is because healthcare is complex, the patient often does not understand upfront the value of something.
Right.
If you say, I'll prevent lung cancer in somebody 20 years from now by sending you mobile alerts when you are about to smoke. Let's say somebody is a smoker, and I say that I know your smoking habits. I'll send you predictive mobile texts just when you are about to go for a smoke to prevent you from smoking. Can you imagine somebody walking up to a store and say, I want to buy a pack of that? It's a very tough challenge, right?
Tough.
So these are the challenges in healthcare sometimes. But starting off from an existing product is useful because it has been proven, tested, and it's solving a particular problem which we are trying.
Right. So you mentioned about different approaches. So different countries have different approaches. Now, was it because you have friends in the UK doctors, you just took that model, or you kind of evaluated? So how do you choose, like, if there are equally good models in different countries, UK might have a model, Australia, US, for example. So how do you evaluate which one to use?
Yeah, I think this is limited to an extent by the circumstances and the circle you have, because really you are not doing research, as in you are not saying, okay, here is the problem, I'm going to visit every health system in the world and find out the model.
Right.
So we have in-depth understanding of this approach because we had two friends and doctors who were doing this, and they gave their experiences, and then we read up about different systems and try to see, but the in-depth experience in this was available.
Right.
I think that's an important starting point for anybody, because unless you will find that many startups, they come from some kind of work experience in that similar kind of domain, and then it helps in understanding the product better and starting off.
So if you have a person, or you yourself have in-depth experience, so maybe it's better not to overcomplicate things, just go with the approach that you have in designing your product.
Yeah, so I think at all times, one thing is that don't start off with a solution and look for a problem.
Right.
That's what we've said earlier also, right? Start with the problem. What is the problem that you are trying to bridge?
Correct.
What is the value proposition that you are giving to the customer.
Right.
And that challenge is something that in healthcare we are constantly struggling with. And we thought that we have a great value proposition, we have a great problem, because health outcomes were definitely going to improve with that product. But then getting the customer to buy into that future promise of good health outcomes is a tough part.
So how did you overcome that? Because I think that is one of the major premises of what your company is built on, right?
Yeah. So, to be very frank, we didn't overcome it. We failed.
Okay.
So, but in the sense that when we were trying to reach out to customers, we realized that one of the ways to reach out to potential chronic disease patients or children was to go through schools. So we went to school and we ran a program called Asthma Absent. We said that asthma is leading cause of school absenteeism. So why don't we help schools to become asthma absent schools? So we launched a 4-pronged program in schools, identifying children with asthma, counseling parents on asthma, training teachers and caregivers on emergency management. If a child had a sudden attack in school, what would you do? And we used to do allergy audits of schools. We used to go to schools and audit schools to see if there are any allergic triggers and how they can reduce it. So we covered 50,000 children in South Bangalore in this program, free program.
Right.
Because we wanted to increase our customer outreach.
Right.
And we realized by doing this, schools were telling us, lovely program, why don't you do more? Why are you doing only about asthma?
Right.
So we said, okay, we can launch a school health program. And so we launched a school health program, and we realized that schools were asking for a school health program because of both mandatory as well as their felt needs.
Right.
And we tried to organize a program around the mandatory as well as felt needs. And that's how we got into school health.
If you like the show, do follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The link is www.facebook.com/FoundersGyan and twitter.com/FoundersGyan. Both these provide you daily tips and articles as well as resources to help and inspire your startup. There are multiple tips per day. Some examples of these tips would be articles on the latest startups, growth hacking tips, how do you build team for startups, how to get funding, etc. So don't forget facebook.com/FoundersGyan and twitter.com/FoundersGyan.
So that's how you kind of moved from one starting point to multiple issues right now. So I think you covered a very, very nice point there. So one of the key challenges of any business is acquiring customers. And what you have told is a great example of doing something for free or maybe very cheap cost, of maybe spreading awareness, which are all marketing tools and techniques. So would you suggest that startups should do some of these initiatives, have some kind of awareness programs? It could be, they could be just they could have a product, they could have a service. Do you think that launching these kind of awareness campaigns where the company or the startup doesn't get immediate benefits, but long-term benefits could come out of it, other things could come out of it, you don't know unless you launch it, right? So would you think it's a recommended step?
Absolutely, it's definitely a recommended step. However, you should know the limits. You cannot forever keep providing some service absolutely free of cost in the hope that if you have a huge customer base, somebody will fund you.
Right.
So it is necessary. It is necessary to enter a market which is first time reacting to your service. Give the also your product design will improve. Customer feedback is very important to design your product. You potentially get a paying customer, then you know that there is a paying potential for this, and then you work around it. But you give it a particular period in time, keep looking for how you can make it a product which can be paid for, and then you take it from there.
Right. So don't bite off more than you can chew, right? Basically, don't just keep extending the free program or free service just to acquire more customers, because eventually it is going to come and bite you back if you don't make it into a picture.
I am a healthcare services startup, so I am probably not the best person, but you would have heard from countless number of
founders,
IT and internet-based startups, where the whole thing is just chasing a number game, just thinking that that will magically bring some VC to your doorstep.
Right.
Healthcare services are much more old-fashioned. We have to get the service, we have to get somebody paying for it, and we have to grow, patient by patient or school by school in our case.
Right. So I think the lessons are very relevant to even the latest startups. I think the latest startups that are really doing well have actually, in some form or the other, incorporated these traditional business ideas and models into their business. So I think what you're sharing is very relevant even to the new age startups. I just have a couple more questions. One of the things that you had mentioned about was with regards to the documentation. So you said you created some in-depth documentation and checklist and things like that. Basically, I suppose those were standard operating procedures, right? So how critical is it to have these kind of documentations? Because a lot of times a lot of startups don't really, they give a lot of excuses like don't have the time or that's not priority. But do you think that's a very critical part of having a standard operating procedure and having well documented processes is a critical part of expanding your product and service?
Ours is a technical service. It's very vital, critical that we put some of these things in place. Right? Like we have to have a clear definition of what is the service you're offering, what is the medical condition you're looking for, what is the form that a nurse is going to fill, and so on and so forth. While you talk about standard operating procedures, maybe a level up, I think some of that can evolve, but you have to know that you cannot avoid them.
Correct.
It's not like somebody else is going to come and do it. Like I'll grow this startup to a phase where some manager will come and do it because I heard about this lazy management, lazy founder technique, right? Where you think that you can hire the best talent and get them to do all these dreary jobs for you.
Right.
I am a personal believer in that you do it for yourself.
Right.
You know your stuff the best, you lay it out. But that's the kind of person I am. So I'm not sure I can recommend that to everyone.
I think it's very important. I would definitely side with you on this one. That as a startup founder, you have to do some of these so-called dreadful jobs. In inverted quotes. It's not really dreadful. It is necessary. It might be boring. It might not be as fancy as you creating the next version of your product or whatever. But it is essential, and I think you're the best person to do it.
Right.
Okay. Last question on product design. What do you think would be your biggest advice to founders with regards to product design? Where do you think people might be lacking? You must have seen a lot of people. So what do you think we should do? Some maybe do's and don'ts of product design.
So I think my perspective on this is that I'm a technocrat. I strongly believe that you need to understand the domain and the product that you're designing. I believe that it has got a big cutting edge over somebody else. So that's very important. But sometimes when we design products, we fall in love with them. And we tend to think that, we have designed a wonderful product and the world is not able to understand the beauty of this product that I've designed. Because you really spend so much time on it. You are the expert, you know things around it. And so you don't tend to think of customers as kings. You tend to think of them as fools. So you start to think that, it's just that the market is not ready for my product.
Right. You give all sorts of justification. I'm ahead of my time.
And so on and so forth. Which may or may not be true. I'm not trying to justify that in any way. But I'm saying ultimately the truth of the true test of the market is you have a product which is acceptable, which can be sold, which delivers value, and which gives you a reasonable, profitable business to build around. Right? And so, while it's important to be a strong domain expert and to be a good product design to keep the understanding of the product in your grip, it is important to, once that you have designed the product, to let go of it from your inner self and to understand what customer feedback is all about and to submit yourself to the market, because ultimately it's the market that decides,
Right. Ultimately, the customer needs to pay for it, and if customer wants something else, you better adapt your product to serve that need, right?
Yeah, or we go and do something else.
Okay, thanks. That was great in-depth information on the product design part of it. We just have another 4 or 5 questions. This is part of the regular interview. So, your co-founder is Dr. Anup Radhakrishnan, right? So, how did you guys meet? First one, and how important are co-founders? Second question, and what advice would you give people starting out with regards to getting a good co-founder?
So, Anup is 2 years my junior at medical college. I ragged him on the first day he walked into medical college. We became great friends. We had the same wavelength. We spent a lot of time together. We were roommates. We promised that at some day we would try and do something together. We didn't know the word startup back then, but we knew that we will do something together. We ran a small quizzing and event management company while we were in college called Event Horizon with another friend. So, that's we go a long way back.
Right.
Coming to your second question on the sort of importance, how important is a co-founder? I think the importance of a co-founder cannot be underestimated in any way. In the early days of a business, having somebody who can share the dream, who can take it along, who can share the defeats also, who can share the every day fights that you put up is very important, cannot be underestimated. So the thing is that I would always recommend that people go and look for like-minded people to be co-founders when we start up. However, it cannot be manufactured.
Right.
You cannot just say that it's important to have a co-founder, so I'm going to go and find one. Wavelengths have to match.
Right.
Many times I find beyond wavelength, sometimes even there is a shared upbringing and things which work in the background. You can't you can't feel it, but you can feel it in many ways.
There are many factors that
make you react in ways that you're predictable ways and things like that. So I would say that a co-founder is very critical. Whether complementary skills are needed or not is an interesting question. I would say that it is great if we get some complementary skills.
Correct.
Right? It's great if we get complementary skills. But maybe sometimes it's not necessary, and the two people have to then decide among themselves who is going to spend more time doing what.
Right.
And then learn some skills along the way. But it's great if we found complementary skills.
Right. Excellent advice. So you place probably wavelength and getting along much higher than complementary skills, right? So,
yes, definitely.
Right. So thanks for sharing that. Now, can you tell us something about yourself that is not commonly known?
I'm not that well known, but
maybe amongst your friends, or
not that well known among my friends.
Yeah,
also.
or your company. Is there something that you like to do that people don't know about you?
Yeah, so I think I'd like to write a book. I've been thinking about it for quite some time. In fact, thanks to WhatsApp, I have started off a new tradition of writing short poetry.
Wow. Okay.
On various WhatsApp groups that I am connected to.
Okay.
And I've received a lot of interesting feedback.
Okay.
Saying that I should take it up more seriously.
Okay.
So definitely something that I'm looking forward to doing.
Okay. Good luck on that. So I think you're getting positive feedback. So I think you should take action on that, and hope to read your book soon. Now, what's the best advice somebody has given you, or alternatively best advice you have heard or maybe read and try to follow in your startup and life?
I'm trying to think of the best advice, because I think advice has been really useful from many quarters, right? So, for instance, we had this great advisor who really helped us at some point in time during this journey. Shrikant Iyer is advising us, and we went to him for various things, and he said, you've got a killer product or service here,
right,
that's cool. So you have to concentrate on getting your pipeline of schools, on getting your getting letters of intent from schools. So even if you don't have the money to execute today, if you go and explain the concept and you get letters of intent, then you can go to an investor and say, I have 5 schools, 10 schools interested, and if I had the money, I would have executed it this way. So that kind of advice was very useful to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that that comes to mind to me the most.
So in layman terms, could we say that having customers is crucial, right? Is that how you put it?
In the sense that he said that you don't really need to have a customer where you have already put something in place and started delivering the service.
Right.
He said that the concept is so strong that if you are able to demonstrate that there is buy-in,
right,
and you document that buy-in, then you can convince an investor that,
right,
look, it's only the question of not having the capital.
Okay.
If you just go and report a lay conversation and say that X number of schools said they are interested, he said go and get letters of intent.
Right.
So
okay, great advice. I think so. Having some letters of intent or some kind of formal documentation that shows that there are potential people ready to buy your product or service. You just need to put in the money or make the product or the service, and you have people willing to commit to buying it. I think that's great advice that a lot of startups can benefit from. So thanks for sharing that. Now let's talk about your worst entrepreneurial moment. So can you tell us about, I'm sure there are plenty in 6 years plus, but what comes to your mind when you think of the worst entrepreneurial moment, and how did you turn it around? Or it doesn't matter if you turned it around or not. What was the lesson that you learned from that experience?
Well, I would say that as a company we pride ourselves in, although we are small and still exploring, we pride ourselves in some of the things like paying people on time, paying employee salaries on time. Usually vendor payments, we are good to vendors like us because we pay on time, etc. I keep a strong look on cash flow and things like that. Last year we went through an interesting phase. We knew that we were getting a lot of advice, and our existing investors also saying that you have to really ramp up the speed of implementation. You have to start showing greater numbers to be able to attract more investment. And we knew that while we are stepping on the gas, we will be running short of money. And that means that we have to look for money faster. But unless we also demonstrate bigger results, it will be tougher to raise the money. So we knew and we started doing that, and it resulted in us covering 1 lakh kids in school, which is not a small number. So we had like 2 funds that we were talking to where very advanced discussions had happened, and more or less the contour of the deal was spoken about, finalized, basic things like what amount of money for what plan, at what valuation, and things like, which are generally considered to be kind of very advanced, like
the finishing touches,
right, kind of thing. And I knew that I had to close those deals for me to continue the way we were continuing. And we just suddenly received one communication towards the end of December last year that they would like to put a wait and watch on us. They were not going forward in spite of almost kind of coming to some kind of closure. And I then felt very big setback because I had thought it's almost like nearing closure. But more than that, I felt the setback because I thought the other investor, who was a smaller investor, would also back out. But the other investor turned around and said that, we are still independently interested.
Right.
And so I went and pursued it, and very senior person, somebody of great repute, was involved. And when we spoke, we felt the confidence that this is back on track. And the person was very convinced that he wants to back this business and gave a kind of go ahead, saying let's do it. And then his team got involved and we went forward with all of that, and again came to the same stage as with the previous fund. And suddenly we had a back out again.
Wow, okay.
So
that's an anticlimax.
Yeah, so that was a difficult moment in our lives because for the first time in 6 years, we delayed payments. We didn't pay staff on time. We didn't pay vendors on time. I came back to office, held a meeting with staff and told them that, look, it's time for many of you to look for new jobs. I helped some people build their resumes. I contacted people where I could place people and things like that. So that was a very difficult moment of the journey. Not that it is unexpected, but when it comes around, you really feel that it's a tough part.
Right.
Luckily for us, we kept at it. We met another investor who was completely convinced with what we were doing. We closed an investment round. And you will be surprised that more than 80% of people who left have rejoined us.
Wow, that's great. So the biggest lesson you learned from that was keep at it? Or what would you say?
Yes, so the biggest lesson, of course, I learned from it is that, startup journey is an uncertain journey and that at no stage of life can you be really certain that this is going to be pulled off.
Right.
And I'm going to continue that through the rest of this journey. I'm not going to think that anything is done and dusted.
So the old saying that don't count your chickens before they hatch is very true.
Absolutely, don't count your chickens before they are hatched. Don't count your eggs as chicken. Don't, of course, keep your eggs safely, but don't count them.
Okay.
And all of those things. But the other lesson in this for me is treat your employees with great respect. Treat your staff, make them feel that you are doing a lot for them in personal terms, not just in remuneration. I built CVs for my employees who were not like I wrote and edited and told them this is how it will look good when you apply to another hospital or something like that. I gave references, which really meant that, when I talked to people and told them that you will have to let go, we'll need to sack certain number of people. I had read at that time of some other startups where there was a big, ruckus and people had locked up a CEO.
Right.
You won't believe it. I don't know it's my good fortune or what. Every single employee thanked me for the opportunity and the time at AddressHealth. They said that they had seen that I had put in my best effort and that they would like to come back and work with us. So what lesson there I want to convey is whatever time you have, do build good, work hard for your employees, work hard for everybody who works for you, make them special, make them feel not just remuneration. Don't just think of it as ESOP and remuneration and that's it, it's done. Know their families, know their issues, talk to them on it, talk to them continuously on growth opportunities and things like that. I often joke with my employees that I am a training program for you to get X job kind of thing, because I'm just trying to tell them that they need to improve their skill set.
Correct.
And I'm not going to retain everybody forever.
Right.
But we have good retention rates.
Right. Great story there, Anand. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I think it's really wonderful to hear that. Now, can you recommend any books or resources for budding entrepreneurs?
I more of like articles and things like that. But one article or thing area that really something which I never thought of is a piece of research I read on entrepreneurial exit. very nice research article.
Right.
Because most of the entrepreneurs, when we get into doing something, we hardly ever think of exit, right? We try to do it because we want to do it. We're passionate about it.
Right.
And the first set of questions in the first 5-6 questions that you are asked by a VC or anything like that, you will be surprised that one of the first questions that come up is, what's the exit strategy?
Right.
And the first time I was so naive when I went to some of these presentations and things. I was really thinking, what are they asking? I mean, I want to be in this for life. I want to do this for life. So I read this beautiful research article on entrepreneurial exit, which talks about legacy business versus and what it means in terms of physically, emotionally, financially exiting a venture, what it does for the cycle of business and so on and so forth. I don't have the reference right now with me, but I can share it.
Yeah, just share it with me. I will link it up on the show notes.
I found that a very useful article because it gave a very nice understanding and groundwork framework for understanding something which entrepreneurs don't usually understand well.
Okay, great. We'll link that up on the show notes. Now, I just have 2 final questions. So, AddressHealth is about 6.5 years old, right? Approximately. And hindsight is always 20/20. But if there's one thing that you do different while you were starting out, what would it be?
One thing that I would do differently is, when you start up the first time and you found the company and then you're deciding on, you get either you and your co-founder and then some other people come and invest and things like that, you get you just put some formula for allocation of equity and things like that. I think there, instead of spending too much time, if it can be done in a kind of futuristic manner, where like the US and the Silicon Valley has many of these convertible note and these kind of options.
Right.
If where at that stage you are not bothered about all of these things, you're saying if this idea goes along and it becomes successful, at that stage definitely we are going to be worried about all this, because definitely a large majority will not go forward, right? Ideas get nipped in the bud for various reasons. So there's no point in trying to work out an elaborate equity scheme and how are you going to get your first investor and how much you're going to give him and all of those things, because it needs to get modified as it goes along. So that's one thing probably I would look at differently from how we did it 6 years back.
Okay, great. So before we move on to the final question, how can our listeners get in touch with you? Obviously, AddressHealth, the website is going to be linked on the show notes page, and they can reach out to your company if they want. But personally, if they want to get in touch with you to bounce off ideas or request some help, etc., with startups, budding founders, what's the best way to reach out to you? LinkedIn, Twitter, email? What's the?
I would say that LinkedIn and email, and I can share both of those profiles.
Sure.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I am not on Twitter.
Okay.
AddressHealth is not on Twitter.
Okay.
I would like somebody to advise me about it, but personally, I'm not a great fan of Twitter.
Okay. I have just one final question, but before that, I just want to take the time to acknowledge and thank you for sharing your knowledge with myself and our listeners. I have a 5-year-old daughter, so I know how important health is when it comes to especially the young ones. Yeah. So I think you're doing a great job, and I wish you continued luck with taking this forward to the next level and growing further. So if there is only one gyan that you could give our would-be founders, what would that be?
One gyan would be that, when you have the urge to start up, try telling no to yourself. And if the urge recurs again, try telling no to yourself again. And if it comes back the third time, don't think of anything else like model or market or anything like that. Just dive in. But dive in giving the commitment that you will be stuck to it for at least 2 to 3 years of your life.
Okay. Excellent advice. Anand, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure chatting with you. Wish you continued success in your venture.
Thank you.
There you have it, folks. Another inspiring startup and the story behind its founder. I hope you liked it. Do check out www.foundersgyan.com/EP50 for the show notes and links to all that we discuss on the show. I'll see you all next week with yet another startup and its founder. In the meantime, I do hope this show has inspired you to take action on your own startup. Good luck on your startup adventure and have a great week ahead. Bye for now.